Hello and welcome to Tech Trends. I'm Olayemi Odunuga, and here's what we have on the program this week. I'll be speaking with Ayatollah Alayode, a researcher at the Global Center on AI Governance on Africa's role in shaping global AI agenda. Also on the program, University of Lagos Computer Sciences Department hosts the 4th International Conference on Artificial Intelligence and Robotics. Plus, Out of School Children's Summit proposes tech-based solutions to ensure no child is left behind. We'll give you more in just a moment. Do stay with us. But just a quick reminder that whether you're a tech enthusiast or just curious about how tech impacts you, you are in the right place. This is Tech Trends, and I'm Olayemi Odunuga.
The notion of superhumans is using bioengineering and artificial intelligence to upgrade human abilities. If they use the power to change themselves, to change their own minds, their own desires, then we have no idea what they will want to do.
As artificial intelligence continues to reshape societies and economies around the world, the conversation around its governance has become increasingly urgent and multifaceted. In my interview with Ayatollah Alayode, a researcher at the Global Center on AI Governance, he digs into Africa's emerging role in shaping global AI governance and how countries like Nigeria and South Africa are ensuring their unique priorities are reflected in the global AI agenda. Here's more. As a researcher at the Global Center on AI Governance, Ayatollah, what is Africa's role in shaping AI governance? Because on the sidelines of the last UN summit, it was declared that Africa is increasingly neither part of the global north or the global south. It is the emerging global center. So what's Africa's participation like?
Yeah, excellent. No, thanks for that. And I like that you alluded to the, the idea that Africa is increasingly neither sort of like a global south, at least monolithically, nor a global north. It's sort of a global center where you have sort of a mix of ideas emerging from it. But I think there's a lot we bring to the table in terms of unique perspectives, right, that are currently unaccounted for in global governance debates. The continent as a whole represents sort of a unique voice in multilateral reform, right? And this is very important for global cooperation in AI governance. So at the moment, you find this sort of architecture where countries in the global north tend to, based on the history of resources and power and all of those things, tend to dominate global governance debate. This is not just AI; it's in everything, whether it's climate change or migration or things like that. But increasingly, we're seeing powerful African countries like South Africa and a host of others, even Nigeria, where I'm from, advocating for a reform in the current multilateral architecture. And I think this is something that can also apply to artificial intelligence. We need to start to rethink our participation models, right? Like how do countries in the north and south work together, but also how do we get African leaders, African policymakers in the room where these decisions are being made. So that's another thing we could contribute to. But I also think, even though there's the sort of like subtle agreement that Africa is neither north or south, but we represent a sort of force in the majority world. And I think it's an opportunity to lead this kind of work, not just for the African continent, but for several other countries in the global south. So there's a huge opportunity ahead of us to define the future of AI, not just for the continent, but for the world. One that is equitable, one that's accessible, one that's built on the ethics of justice and responsibility.
All right, fantastic, Ayatollah. But just before we get into the linguistic gap conversation, just to touch a bit on what you said about South Africa, Nigeria, doing their bit to ensure that they contribute to the global AI conversation, because we do know that this year, Nigeria released her own national AI strategy so that our priorities are reflected. So let's talk about those priorities a little more now. How can we ensure that Africa's unique context is captured in global AI governance?
I think there are two ways to these things. One is sort of the idea of sort of advocating for inclusion in global governance or global AI governance debate. The other one is this sort of your own active participation or active push as a continent. I think I like to start from that, something that sort of takes account of Africa's agency. So earlier this year, I worked together with a host of others and at the Global Center on AI Governance on African Union Continental AI Strategy, right? And that was sort of a unique opportunity for us as Africans to advance on our own ideas. And one of the things we pushed for in the strategy was a new concept of AI risk, which is what we call risks to African values and systems, what we call sort of subversion of indigenous knowledge, right? So the increase in digitalization, of course, it's an advantage to want to get as much data as possible to increase the accuracy and competence of these AI models. At the same time, we are pushing for a sort of technological revolution that doesn't take into account local knowledge, local context, or that slowly erases some sort of subtle or unspoken cultural practices, right? And I think this is something that no one will take seriously if you don't come together as a continent to advance or push for that idea. So I think before we talk about inclusion, we need to also talk about active participation, sort of taking your own destiny into your hands. And I must commend like the African Union and also ALDA-NEPAD and a host of other regional organizations that are working on these things. In terms of active inclusion, I think this is something that's certainly very important. Countries within the African Union, countries within the African continent need to also kind of go all out, in forming these sort of partnerships, right? So Nigeria, for example, is a partner to the Bletchley Declaration that was the UK Responsible AI Summit that happened last year. I think it's also a signatory to the Hiroshima Agreement, which includes Japan and a host of other countries working on safety of generative AI. So on one hand, we need to push for, inclusion. On the other hand, we need to be very active in kind of defining this AI feature for ourselves.
Well, you're definitely right. We need collaboration, we need partnerships, because when it comes to something as huge as this, we cannot afford to work in silos. But when it comes to AI development and the responsible use of, I'm going to say, localized AI solutions, because we're bringing this down to Africa's context, how can we better take advantage of our youth? Because almost everyone agrees that there's a massive amount of talent coming out of Africa. How can we take advantage of that to drive digital growth?
Okay, there's a lot of things we need to do. I think I'll just come back to these fundamentals. When the Nigerian government released its national AI strategy, which I think is a good one. It's definitely a progress in the right direction. People responded in a way that I thought was interesting. And one of the arguments that came out of that response was that you cannot build AI on top of nothing, right? You need to be working on your fundamental infrastructure, right? Electricity, internet, data infrastructure, which Nigeria is seriously lagging behind in, right? So to take advantage or to harness the power of, artificial intelligence, we need to start from this sort of, basic infrastructure. For example, internet penetration in Nigeria is less than 50% of the entire population. So we need to, be expanding broadband access. And there's a lot of policy framework actually that's, being formed to create an enabling environment for this, but we need more investment in this direction. So infrastructure investment is one thing we need to be doing. And within that also, maybe I could cover this a little bit. We need to be investing in, data centers, compute power, basically. You cannot be an AI leader without, having enough, compute investment. The second thing is, and this is a bit of a tricky one, is linguistic representation. I have kind of like different idea around this. There are over 10,000 languages in the world, right? And only about 10 of them or so dominate the internet. And in fact, when you look at African languages representation, is actually less than 2% on the internet. It's kind of like a tricky debate where you're thinking, well, this is a private sector remit, right? How much should government really do? But looking at where we are at the moment, we need some sort of government support in this sense. And, priorities are very, very important. But we also need investment in skills and talent, right? We've made some progress, at least in the last couple of years. If you look at the post-2010 sort of tech revolution in Nigeria, where we have a lot of young people that are getting into data science, machine learning, and a lot of other digital skills. But we need to kind of move up the chain a little bit. And this is what I mean. We need to be investing in skills that make our young people competitive globally, right? So when it comes to investment in skills and talents, we need a mix of both. We need governments to be investing in skills and talent, traditional, digital skills, or even those that are very specific to AI, like, prompt engineering, data labeling, machine learning, data science, and all of that. But at the same time, we need to have policy guardrails in place that prevent, regulatory arbitrage or companies taking advantage of loopholes. For example, the fair wage argument, right? If you are a Nigerian data scientist, you should, if not exactly as your US counterpart, but you should be earning something that's fairly comparable to them. And I think we need our government to step in this.
We'll be wrapping up in a bit, but just to say that I totally agree with you. I think there are so many important areas we need to definitely pay attention to before AI can fully work here. And like you said, policies, investment, data infrastructure, internet penetration, and all of that. And I know that you've touched a little bit on this, but I'm going to take us back a bit to the linguistic gap, because despite the significant strides AI has made in different sectors, be it healthcare, finance, or even security, there's still a linguistic divide, especially when it comes to generative AI. So if we're talking about inclusivity, why do many AI tools struggle to work effectively in less widely spoken languages or dialects? And I can give you context, right? Because I'm producing a program on AI, and we're trying to make use of AI tools to make it much more relatable to the Nigerian audience. And when we try to make use of the Nigerian or African English style, there are limitations in terms of the manner avatars can speak, which doesn't apply to the UK or US English style. So what are your thoughts on this?
So the way our systems work is kind of simple. It's just computers generally. It's garbage in, garbage out. So you have a machine learning framework, but you also have your inputs, which is basically the data, right? And that gives you your model. So you can guess why they don't work so well with African languages. It's just the same argument I made. There's not enough representation of African languages on the internet for the data to even be trained on it, right? And this is not just about African languages, right? It's also about many local languages that are not well documented or well digitized in the world. So you can expect the models to underperform when it comes to this. But it's not also just about language. It's also about understanding the context, right? So let's say you even do an excellent job in, translating these languages. I can give you an example. There's an interesting project that's been done in a West African country that attempts to, so you have this sort of revolution that's going on in that part of the world where governments are increasingly shifting from, the dominant colonial language of French to making their local language the, lingua franca. And in this country, you had a team of, very brilliant ML engineers who came together to say, look, this is a chicken and egg problem. You want to develop curriculum in your local language, right? You want, using AI as it were, but you can't do that if you do not have enough of that language or text, a corpus of that language represented online, right? But for that to happen as well, you need, AI tools, right? So to do that, it was sort of like you needed to still start from English, right? And so you generate all this content in English and then use some third-party application and connect it to whatever AI tool or AI model you're using, and then you translate it into that local language, right? In that process, even though you have some sort of corpus already, for example, Google Translate, there's an excellent work being done on Yoruba language and on Google Translate, or Hausa or several other Nigerian languages, for example. But the context is missing, right? When you do these translations, right? And that's very important. So to kind of get, to bypass this linguistic divide, we need to be doing two things. We need to invest more in local data collection. But like I said, we also need to put guardrails in place. So it's kind of like a tricky balance, because for AI models to work effectively, right, they need large troves of data. At the same time, it kind of going on a mindless journey of data collection has so many risks, right? Data privacy risks, especially, and also cyber security risks. So we need to kind of do this in a very balanced way. But the second thing as well is to engage local engineers, linguists, and everyone in that sort of, ecosystem. It's not enough to just say, okay, we have a bunch of guys who've done excellent work in doing the translations or, doing the NLP frameworks in local languages, but you also need to employ or engage people who understand local context. And this is why I keep arguing that, to have a robust AI ecosystem, you just don't need a scientist alone. You need people from, the arts and humanities, because this is about social technical context, right? So you need to be engaging those kind of people. And I think that's sort of the way forward.
Okay, Int'l, I think for every response you give, I can say I totally agree with you. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Int'l Alayode, researcher at the Global Center on AI Governance. Thank you so much for sharing your time and insights with us on Tech Trends.
Thank you, Olayemi.
The Machine Intelligence Research Group of the Department of Computer Sciences in Unilag has hosted the 4th International Conference on Artificial Intelligence and Robotics. With the theme, Artificial Intelligence for Future Industrialization of Medicine in Sub-Saharan Africa, this year's edition explores the role of AI and robotics in advancing healthcare across Nigeria and beyond.
The future of health is looking a bit different. First of all, you have your scientist who is generating this huge amount of data from your genomic code. That data goes to what we call the data and the bioinformatics specialist, who has training in bioinformatics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning. And then it goes to the next type of it goes to the first type of doctor. And that doctor is specialized in precision medicine. In other words, that doctor is now going to interpret that data and give the prescription to the doctor that will be treating the patient in the clinic. So you can see that medicine is changing dramatically. So in the future, you will have a patient on the side of the bed. Inside the bed, the doctors will come, they will open the notes, and inside the notes, you will just see these data points. And can the doctors understand this? No, they can't, because they're not trained as bioinformaticians. And so what we need is artificial intelligence to be able to go into multiple areas, diagnostics, changing paradigms of health, building capacity, drug discovery, early detection, quicker throughput, better patient outcomes, personalized medicine. Like I said, each and every one of you is a bunch of big data.
From groundbreaking algorithms in artificial intelligence to new medical technologies, for example, the collaboration between us here in the room can revolutionize how medicine is developed, for example, produced and delivered in Nigeria, Africa, and the world. At GIZ DTC Nigeria, we are proud to support the collaboration between the academia and research and the innovation ecosystem, which is critical to our future and our ability to catch up with the ongoing 4th industrial revolution. By supporting academia to commercialize AI research, we can build a future that is not only technologically advanced, but also accessible and equitable across Africa and the world. So I urge us all here, academics, industry leaders, policymakers, and development partners, to deepen our collaboration. Let us create frameworks that allow AI-driven research to be commercialized effectively. Let us ensure that innovation, for example, in medicine, are aligned with the region's unique challenges and opportunities. Together, we can harness the power of research commercialization to redefine the future of medicine and industrialization in Africa.
Education is often described as the foundation for personal growth and societal development. Yet for millions of children in Nigeria, this foundation remains out of reach, with over 18 million of them out of school. Well, that's a narrative the Out of School Children's Summit was aiming to rewrite by proposing tech-based solutions.
According to the United Nations Children's Fund, 18.5 million children in Nigeria are out of school. Their potential remains untapped and their future uncertain. For many of these children, the streets have become their classrooms. But that's a narrative the Out of School Children Summit 2024 is working to change.
At the moment, UNESCO puts the figure at 18.3 million. Someone tells me the population of Nigeria is over 200 million. You do the maths. 18.3 million over 200 million citizens. Over 10% of your future workforce are on the streets, roaming around. This subject matter is a very, very, very serious issue. It's a burning platform, and the government of the day needs to pay attention to this matter.
With the theme, Street to School, a tech-based solution, speakers discuss how technology can bridge the education gap and ensure no child is left behind.
It's not the children now. We now have to look at the whole system. It's got to be a holistic solution. Their teachers, are they trained? Do they even know how to use a computer themselves? Can they help children? Can they teach online? Many teachers do not know how to teach to an empty classroom.
Yeah.
So how to assess that children are learners. So it's a very, very, we have to take a very nuanced, multi-dimensional, multi-stakeholder, more holistic solution.
Some leaders in the States will say, oh, I've provided 20,000 laptops. I'm just using that as a generic example. You are then asking yourself, do you have the infrastructure to even cater for the so-called 20,000 laptops? Do you have teachers who are ready to use that tech thing to train the pupils?
We need to put it into the context of Nigeria, think about the sustainability of it, and change our strategy. I mean, that is key. So the question shouldn't be, is Nigeria ready? This is how we want to make Nigeria ready to have this infrastructure.
Our responsibility is to make sure that all our children, all 20-something million of our children, have basic digital skills. Our children should not be surprised as to what a computer is. Our children should be able to turn it on, turn it off, use a calculator, figure out where google.com is, use Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel. It is not beyond them, they're ready for it. The reason why it is urgent is because of AI.
From the summit, one thing is clear, which is that collaboration is key. By working together, governments, non-governmental organizations, tech innovators can create sustainable solutions to the out-of-school children crisis.
The first website at CERN and in the world was dedicated to the World Wide Web project itself and was hosted on Berners-Lee's Next Computer. In 2013, CERN launched a project to restore this first ever website, info.cern.ch. On the 30th of April, 1993, CERN put the World Wide Web software in the public domain. Later, CERN made a release available with an open license, a more sure way to maximize its dissemination. These actions allowed the web to flourish.
That's all for this week on Tech Trends. I hope you enjoyed the episode and picked up something new along the way. Remember, Tech Trends is here to keep you updated on insights, trends, and developments happening in the tech space. Also, don't forget, you can catch all of our episodes on the channel's TV YouTube account. Make sure to watch, share, and like your favorite editions. Until I come your way again, I'm Olayemi Otunuga, and I'll see you next time.